Woodrow Wilson, Leadership and Legacy.
The leadership and legacy of Woodrow Wilson was best exemplified in several main ways. These ways include his inspiring early life, his progressive reforms as president, and his active leadership in World War I. Thomas Woodrow Wilson was born on December 28, 1856, in Staunton, Virginia. Wilson aspired to a college education, even though he received very little previous education due to the lack of public schools during the Reconstruction period in the South. Wilson attended Davidson College, Princeton University, the University of Virginia Law School, and Johns Hopkins University.
Wilson's doctoral dissertation at Johns Hopkins, titled Congressional Government, A Study in American Politics, became a classic of American political science. Wilson became a teacher at Princeton and published numerous books. Wilson held minor leadership positions at Princeton, such as President of the Campus Baseball Association and Secretary of the Football Association.
Wilson achieved his first major leadership position when he became president of Princeton University in 1902. Here he made many reforms. He created an administrative structure, with leaders who reported directly to him. He redesigned the curriculum, and added an honors program. Wilson's reforms were very successful.
After his term at Princeton ended, he became governor of New Jersey in 1910. As governor, Wilson fought against political machines and supported workers' compensation laws. Wilson's reforms as governor attracted the attention of progressive leaders throughout the nation.
Woodrow Wilson, the Democratic candidate, was elected the 28th President of the United States in 1912. He defeated the sitting President, William Howard Taft, and progressive candidate, Theodore Roosevelt.
President Woodrow Wilson would go on to serve 2 terms in the executive office.
Numerous people occupied Wilson's presidential cabinet during his 2 terms as president. Some of these people include William Jennings Bryan as Secretary of State, Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer, and David F. Houston, who held the positions of Secretary of the Treasury as well as Secretary of Agriculture. Wilson gave them equal authority.
We have in this party 2 things, a political party and a body of social reformers. Mr. Roosevelt puts forth an admirable platform of what he would like to do for the people. But how is he going to do it? He proposes in his platform not to abolish monopoly, but to take it under the legal protection of the government and to regulate it. In other words, to take the very men into partnership who have been making it impossible to carry out these great programs by which all of us wish to help the people.
The previous was a segment of Wilson's 1912 election campaign speech, where he talked about his plan for progressive reform. Wilson's program for reform was called The New Freedom. The New Freedom attacked what Wilson called the triple wall of privilege, as shown in this political cartoon. The triple wall of privilege was tariffs, the banks, and the trusts. One of the most important goals of the New Freedom was to limit the power of big corporations and create more opportunities for small businesses.
Woodrow Wilson passed the Underwood Tariff Act, which lowered tariffs so Americans could buy foreign goods instead of overpriced goods from trusts. The act also created a graduated income tax, which affected the wealthy business owners. Wilson also passed the Federal Reserve Act, which placed national banks under the control of a single Federal Reserve Board. This established economic stability throughout banks. He also passed the Federal Farm Loan Act, which aided the struggling farmers.
Wilson established the Federal Trade Commission in 1914 to monitor monopolistic business practices. The FTC still survives after over 100 years. He also passed the Clayton Antitrust Act in 1914, which strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act and reduced the power of trusts. Another act passed by Wilson was the Workingmen's Compensation Act in 1916, which helped injured and disabled workers. Wilson outlawed child labor with the Keating-Owens Act, but it was eventually deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 1918. He also passed the Adamson Act, which gave a maximum 8-hour workday for all railroad employees.
On January 28, 1916, Wilson made a bold decision. He nominated Louis Brandeis to the Supreme Court. This was such a bold decision because Brandeis was the first Jewish member of the U.S. Supreme Court. The legacy of this decision was revealed as a result of Louis Brandeis's progressive efforts in the Supreme Court. The 19th Amendment, which guaranteed all women the right to vote, was ratified during Wilson's second term as president. This would change women's roles in American life drastically.
During Wilson's first term as president, World War I broke out in Europe. Many of the countries wanted America to join and fight on their side. However, Wilson pledged neutrality because America had a diverse population, and Wilson did not want to set Americans against each other by joining the war. Wilson also ran under the motto of "He kept us out of war" during his second election.
On May 7, 1915, a German U-boat sunk the Lusitania, a British passenger ship. The sinking of the Lusitania fired up Americans because 128 of the passengers killed were American. Germany also sank the Sussex, a French passenger ship, which further infuriated Americans.
What finally propelled Wilson into the Great War was the Zimmerman Note. The Zimmerman Note was a telegram sent by Germany to Mexico to propose an alliance between the two. Wilson demonstrated great leadership by realizing America's safety was threatened by the Zimmerman Note, so he declared war upon Germany.
The Allied powers and Central Powers fought against each other for 4 years. What you are currently viewing is rare footage of World War I combat. Germany surrendered to the Allies on November 11, 1918. The Great War had ended. Wilson's goal was to promote peace without victory, and he mentioned this in his 14-point speech. In the 14 points, Wilson thought of ways to try to maintain peace between countries.
Wilson's most famous goal of the 14 points was to establish the League of Nations. Other nations supported this idea, but America rejected the League. Wilson's persistence to create the League of Nations eventually caused the United Nations to be established in 1945.
Wilson went on a speaking tour throughout America in support of the League of Nations. Due to the stress of this tour, he suffered a massive stroke, which directly led to his death on February 3, 1924, at the age of 67.
Wilson was given numerous honors for his outstanding leadership and legacy throughout his life. Princeton gives the Woodrow Wilson Award, the highest honor you can receive, to one alumnus each year in recognition of outstanding public service.
Another honor Wilson received was getting his name and photo on a postage stamp. Woodrow Wilson won the 1919 Nobel Peace Prize because of his successful creation of the League of Nations and his peace negotiations following World War I.
Woodrow Wilson also has the distinction of being the first president to throw out a first pitch at a Major League Baseball game. which he did 3 times in 1913, 15, and 16.
Thomas Woodrow Wilson's leadership and legacy was demonstrated in his influential childhood, his progressive changes as America's leader, and his energetic supremacy in World War I.